Well, it's time for another Getting to Know Your Indiana Neighbor. Now, remember, I'm in the middle right now of a little project that I've been working on and enjoying so much, and it's called Indiana Neighbor Legends and Sportscasters. Well, last week, I had the pleasure of making the road trip up to Broad Ripple and talking to Bobby Plump. What a treat that was. Well, what a day I had today. I went up to Indianapolis again on a road trip, right downtown in the Circle at the big Emmis Communications building, and I got not one, but two great sportscasters of Indiana. Early today, I talked to Greg Rakestraw. Well, Greg Rakestraw, if you don't know the name, you'll know the voice if you see him. He's done all kinds of state finals over the years on the IHSAA network from the various sports. In fact, over 200, he's counting, state finals from all the sports across the board. So we'll talk to him. He's done so many other things. By the way, I think he's got to be the busiest sportscaster in the state of Indiana without question. That's a little bit down the road, a couple of days away. But today, our next Indiana broadcast legend, in my mind, is Bob Lovell. So we met with him today also at the Emmis Communications building on the Circle, right where he does his Friday and Saturday night magic of the Indiana Sports Talk night show. When he talks about Indiana sports, whether it's basketball, football, Colts, Pacers, you name it, he'll talk it. You may have even called in and talked to him before, but he's done so much more than that show, and you're going to find out all about it. So we'll get back to our local Getting to Know Your Neighbors in just a little bit, but we've lined up a few over the next week. So right now, our next Indiana neighbor that we're going to get to know is broadcast legend Bob Lovell, and that is right now. Well, welcome to another edition of Getting to Know Your Indiana Neighbor. And as I said before, kind of sidetracked a little bit. We're getting to know our Indiana neighbors, but also something that I wanted to do is getting to know our Indiana neighbor broadcasters. And we all know this gentleman right here, Bob Lovell. I know I don't need to introduce him to most of you, but I will. And I'm sure there's some things here that I have left off, Bob. But first of all, thanks so much.
Oh, Greg, it's great to be here. You kidding me?
We are, by the way, this is the studio right here.
Right.
That Bob does his magic on Friday nights. And you said this is the best studio in the entire
No question.
Emmis Communication building.
Absolutely. You're very kind, but it's home. And I've been with Emmis over a little over 22 years, something like that. And it's a great studio, plenty of room, great place to do a show, and literally great place to have some fun.
Well, I kind of look at this, and people who are old enough, and you would be because you're older than me.
Yeah, I'd be old enough.
Yeah, I kind of look at it as the old Ralph Edwards, This Is Your Life.
Right. I remember watching it as a kid.
Yep. So we kind of start from the beginning and move forward. And if we get sidetracked, we get sidetracked. But tell me a little bit about Bob Lovell growing up. Where were you born?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about 10-year-old Bob Lovell. What were your aspirations?
I don't think I want to tell you that.
Well, whatever you want to tell me.
I was born in a log cabin in Illinois. Actually, I was born in Lebanon, Indiana.
Lebanon, all right.
And grew up in Plainfield. My mom and dad's doctor. My brother and I were both born in Lebanon. He had delivering privileges at the hospital in Lebanon, and his office was in Brownsburg. So I'm a Hendricks County kid. Grew up there. Youngest of two. My dad worked for an oil company. He was a district manager for something called Plainfield Oil Company. They owned Marathon gas stations in Hendricks County and surrounding counties in west central Indiana. My mom was a bank teller. My brother was 3 years older than I am, and we lived, right downtown, the old part of town in Plainfield, Indiana. And it was one of those idyllic childhoods. Everybody, no one locked their doors. Everybody took care of one another. My brother and I, our whole family was immersed in sports. And it's what we were a sports family. My dad played on a sectional championship at Pittsboro High School. My mom and dad were both Pittsboro grads. My dad played at Pittsboro. And here's how we were. Greg, you'll love this. Friday nights, if we weren't watching our beloved Quakers, we were in the car somewhere going to see somebody in Hendricks County play basketball on Friday and Saturday nights. That's how we were invested in sports in our family. Played football, basketball, baseball, all of those kinds of things. And looking back at this stage of my life, I recognize how fortunate I was to have a perfect family, perfect parents, the best older brother you could have. Get a little misty-eyed talking about it, but the things that I've been able to accomplish in my life directly because of the great family I had, the great teachers that my wife and I had at Plainfield, and that community, embraced us. I don't do any of the things I've done without that background.
And it's interesting because before we went on, he just told you about his perfect childhood. He was telling me about his perfect adulthood now toward the retired side. And you really were, because he was talking about grandchildren, which a lot of us can relate to, and how proud he is of them. And it just seems like, Bob Lovell, as you said, you've had some troubles, as everybody has,
Yeah, sure.
health-wise and
Absolutely.
otherwise, but it's been a good life.
It has been, and my wife and I, we've been married 53 years. I married my junior high sweetheart, Penny Gers, prettiest girl in Plainfield, and still is the prettiest, by the way. And so, we started dating when we were 13, still together, celebrate our 53rd wedding anniversary in July. And we remark all the time that we're still two kids from Plainfield. Two of the luckiest kids from Plainfield. And we've led a blessed life. We hope much more to go. But if you had told us we'd be where we are now when we got married in 1969, never would have believed you. But we, again, benefited from great parents, great family members, great siblings, growing up in a tremendous community. We were fortunate and continue to be blessed.
Plainfield, Indiana is the big town to us back in Lagodi, but when you were growing up,
not then,
very small,
small town. Yeah, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 people. And it's the kind of thing that you ride your bike. I used to ride my bike down to the park every day and try to get in trouble, try to find some kind of trouble to get in, playing some kind of sport. And so, at nights we had friends who lived a couple streets over. They had the big yard. It was the house that had the big yard, the big driveway, the court, and it was the place where we were going to play. The Rogers family. And in that part of town, my brother and I would hang out there, and the rule was you need to be back at home at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. 6
o'clock. Dinner was served at 6, and you needed to be there, dressed, ready, washed, and clean. And don't make your father have to come and find you, because it's not going to be much fun. And nobody worried about each other because everybody took care of us.
So I'm going to go off the rails a little bit, just from a memory, but it may be something that I made up. But at Plainfield High School, for whatever reason, I'm thinking, do you have a brother and there's an athletic complex or a baseball field named after him?
It's named after my brother.
It is named after your brother. Okay. Tell me about that a little bit.
Well, I'll get emotional.
Okay. It's up to you.
No, it's good. My brother Jim was a tremendous baseball player. My brother and I were, again, we played everything. My dad, to go back, my dad was a charter member of the Plainfield Optimist Club. And they started the Optimist Club to give my brother and me and other guys a chance to play Little League Baseball. So they started it with that express purpose. My brother graduates from Plainfield, goes to Evansville, University of Evansville, played baseball. And 1970, summer of 71, he had gone to Evansville, didn't make his grades after 3 years, came back home to Plainfield. The irony is, went to IUPUI to help finalize his degree, went down to Bloomington his last year, got his diploma, graduated, and then later on that summer in 1971 was killed in a car accident. And so the president, if you know Plainfield geography, that field you're talking about, Jim Lovell Field, is located on Highway 40,
right,
on the east side of town. And so that was land that was owned by Public Service, which is now Duke. And the president of Public Service is a friend of my dad's. And I think as a way to honor my dad, way to honor my brother, they donated the land to the Optimist Club and built a Little League complex, 4 diamonds, played soccer, played football. Thousands and thousands of kids had a chance to play there, and they named it Jim Lovell Memorial Field.
I thought there was something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
I'm enormously proud of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's and I just, it makes so much sense to me, because my parents were all in supporting their community. They were honored at Plainfield. Here's how they are. My brother and I both played. We played 3 sports each. But after I graduated, my mom and dad would never miss a Plainfield High School basketball game. They'd go to volleyball games, girls basketball. They'd go to games, and they supported the high school. And so the school was nice enough to honor them at halftime of one of their games, and just who they are and what they do. And it started a long, long time ago when we were kids just playing little league ball.
Was his father huge into sports in the community as well?
My grandfather?
Yes.
No, not at all.
No.
No.
Okay. So he got
my grandfather Hollis was a unique guy. He literally wouldn't say. He was a man of very, very few words. He didn't talk at all.
Okay.
My father was a railroad worker.
Okay.
And I have pictures. Some of my fondest memories of seeing pictures of my grandfather. My grandfather worked with a pick and an axe and a shovel and repairing railroad tracks.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. And the work ethic in our family came from him. You're going to go out there and work, and you're going to work hard. You're going to show up every day. You're going to work as hard as you can work. And I've been raised on that, starting with my grandfather. And but no, my grandfather was not into sports. My mom and dad obviously were, but my grandparents weren't. Now my grandparents on my mom's side were more than that, but on my dad's side, my grandmother and grandfather, I don't think even saw me play when I was a kid.
The irony of your grandfather not speaking very few words and you making a living.
It's not lost on me at all.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Yeah.
Hollis was stubborn, fought in the First World War, a hardworking man, salt of the earth guy, but he wouldn't talk. He just said he told me, he said, I don't have anything to say. I got it. I'm fine with it. So that's my grandfather.
I bet he had plenty to say.
He had plenty to say, quite frankly.
I'll bet you wish, or somebody would. What I did just recently is interview my father-in-law for my wife's request.
Right.
Exactly like we're doing here.
Right.
So that his legacy, just turned 87 years old, could be kept forever, and how he grew up in a one-room schoolhouse and such. And I'll just bet more people wish that their grandparents would have that sort of conversation so that future generations could
well,
I bet he was a very interesting man.
He was an interesting man, and his word was his bond, and it was as loyal and as the day is long. And when he said he was going to do something, he did it, and it mattered to him. And sad thing for me, my wife and I have tried our best. We're blessed to have one grandchild, Jack, and we've tried our best to engage him and involve him as much as we can in our lives and in the lives of his family, because I'm the sole surviving member of my family. My brother was killed in a car accident in '71. My mom and dad have both been gone for about 10, 15 years. My mother-in-law, father-in-law have both passed. My wife is the youngest of 4, so she still has one of her siblings passed a couple of years ago. So, my family's dwindling, and I recognize it, and I desperately want Jack to understand what his family was about. Not just me, not just my wife, his grandmother, but about our whole family, because it's important to us.
Yeah. So you were a good athlete.
I was okay.
You were okay. Okay enough to play basketball at Franklin, right?
I played basketball and baseball. I played 3 sports at Plainfield. I was a quarterback on the football team. I'm one of those guys. I was quarterback on the football team. 3-year starter. Freshmen weren't part of the high school. So I started as a sophomore at shortstop on the baseball team. We won the sectional my sophomore and junior year in baseball. And I was a 2-year starter on the basketball team. We won the sectional my sophomore and senior year. So,
all right, so a little more
the
than
teams
okay.
I played, I'm fortunate. The teams I played on in football, basketball, and baseball won a lot of games.
So Franklin today, and has been for the last 40 years, or what have you, I guess, for you, right, has been extremely important. You went to Franklin College. Where did that, so coming out of high school, why Franklin College? What was the drawing?
Well, I wanted to, surprisingly, I wanted to be a high school basketball coach.
Okay.
So I wanted to go somewhere where I could play basketball. I wanted to play basketball and baseball. Quite frankly, baseball was my better sport, but I wanted to play both sports, and I wanted some place that would allow me to do that. I had a coach my freshman basketball and football coach at Plainfield, a guy named Joe Beeler, who had an enormous impact on my life because he was the one who contacted Franklin and said, "You need to recruit this guy." He calls me and goes, I'll take you down to a game. We'll go watch him play. So he was pushing me as hard as he could to get to Franklin. Coach Ed Thompson had just taken over the program there, and I was in his first recruiting class. And so I, came in with a bunch of guys just like me, small town guys. Steve Fisher. Remember
Fisher?
Steve?
Oh, we all know Steve Fisher.
Steve was a year behind me.
He was my freshman high school basketball coach.
Those are the kinds of guys that they recruited. And so I got a chance to play basketball and baseball for 4 years. In basketball, my senior year, Coach Thompson calls me late in the summer and says, look, his assistant coach, Coach Dickerson, had resigned. And he said, I know you want to get into coaching. I need help. Will you consider being my assistant coach? So here I am as a senior in college. Yeah, senior in college. And it didn't take me long to say yes because number one, I'm not running sprints anymore. And number two, I'm not getting yelled at anymore.
Yeah, right? No resentment there from the other
not
side.
at all, quite frankly. And so the guy who gives me the opportunity of a lifetime, to be honest, is Ed Thompson, for whom I'm eternally grateful, and he knows it. I love him like my own father and appreciate the opportunity. But I got a chance to do that, and from there, I've gotten lucky. I'm not going to lie. I mean, my life has been characterized by a lot of luck. A lot of right place, right time situations. That fortunately, for whatever reason, I was able to maximize.
But that's what your aspirations were, to be
absolutely
a high school basketball coach?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, look, I thought, growing up again, we went to all these games when I was a kid, and it struck me early in my life. The guy is that high school coach. You guys know this better than anybody in our state in Lagodi. Come on now.
We do.
Coach Butcher's the guy, right? And so when you're walking down the street and you go in that store, hey, Coach Butcher, hey, how Coach Wagner, all that stuff, right? And I wanted to be that guy. I really did.
Didn't you even see the bad parts of that guy?
Well, not really. I mean, all I saw was being the guy.
Okay, cool.
And that's something I wanted to do. And my life took different turns. I didn't do it. I mean, I went into college.
So you graduated from Franklin, went right into coaching.
Yeah.
Well, your senior year, as you said.
Yeah.
Need to sneeze? You're good.
I may or may not.
Okay.
I got a chance, my senior year. My wife is a year behind me at Franklin College. And so our plan was to be, and I still think it's a noble plan, quite frankly. We just didn't do it. She was going to be a teacher. She wanted to be a Spanish teacher. She was really good. So the idea was for us to get out there and be that coach, wife, husband, wife, teacher combination. Everywhere in our state, every community has people like that who have great lives and have tremendous impacts on the people in their communities. And that's the path we wanted to be on. We just didn't do it because coming out of school, everybody's telling me, my advisor, my coach, everybody's telling me, look, I was going to go to grad school. I've been accepted to Bloomington. Back then, you had to get your master's. If you were going to teach, you had to get a master's within 5 years. And I thought, well, you know what? My wife's got another year of college. We're already thousands and thousands of dollars in debt anyway. So what's tack on a few more thousand? What's the big deal? I wasn't an economics major, obviously. And so our plan was I was going to go to grad school and stay at the college and help Coach Thompson coach basketball and baseball for another year. And then when my wife graduated, I would, in theory, have my master's degree, and we're going to get out there and seek our fame and fortune. And I think at the time, I thought it was a pretty good plan.
Yeah.
I got talked out of the plan by my advisor, who says, you're going to be trying to get a job with people who have a bachelor's and no experience, and you have a master's and no experience. You're going to cost school corporations more money. You're going to have trouble getting a job. Well, at some point in the last couple of years, you might have been able to tell me that before now, because you and I have had these discussions about this plan.
Yeah, I need a job.
Yeah, and now you're telling me the plans that we've agreed on you don't like. And so fate intervenes. Literally, I was driving a truck that summer after I graduated from Franklin, driving a truck for a guy in Franklin. Get home one day, my wife goes, "You've had a phone call from the principal at Center Grove Junior High. He wants to talk to you about a job." Okay. And so I ignore it. Don't return the call. He calls back 2 days later. My wife scolds me a little bit. And she says, you know, you're being rude. Be polite, whether you want the job or not. Return the phone call. Yeah, okay. So I call the guy back, and he goes, I want you to come over and talk about teaching 8th grade English at the junior high. I go, I'm not interested. Literally, it's dead silence on the other end of the phone. Ira Morrison, great guy, gives me my first teaching job, and again, the impact on my life you can't measure.
Right.
A fantastic guy. So I run into my advisor literally at a grocery store, telling the story. He goes, you know what, you ought to reconsider. The guy's going to offer you a job. So fortunately, Ira calls me back the next day. He goes, I wanted to talk to you about a 9th grade English job. I said, okay, I'll come out and talk. So Franklin to Center Grove is about a 15-minute drive. And I go out, talks to me about the job. I go through it. I like it. I said, look, I know I shouldn't ask you this question as a first-year teacher, but I've got this opportunity to stay at Franklin College and be an assistant in basketball and baseball. I'd prefer not to have any extracurricular activities. Can I do that? And he laughs and goes, you know, most people don't ask that question. I said, well, I needed to get it out of the way. Mm-hmm. And he said, you're going to be the freshman class sponsor. I said, okay, what do I do? He goes, you help them build the float. I said, that's it? I said, I'm done. I said, let me ask you another question. I haven't applied for a job. Why are you offering me this job? We've never met. Why did you call me? He said, well, we have a luncheon at Franklin College with the student teachers and the cooperating teachers. And the department chair of education, Dr. Erickson, asked me to MC the luncheon. In case you haven't figured out, I have an ability to talk. And so I MC the luncheon. And principals, cooperating teachers, all of us. Mm-hmm. And it was fun. It was a question and answer kind of thing. And I talked to some of my classmates and said, you know, if I'm struggling, jump up here, go ahead, planted questions around the room. I'm pretty good. Okay. I mean, I think I thought I did pretty well. I didn't know it was a job interview, mm-hmm. but I handled it reasonably well. Mr. Morrison was in attendance, called Dr. Erickson and said, what's the guy majoring in? And he says English, and he goes, I want to hire him. Dr. Erickson says, you better hurry because he's not going to have any difficulty getting a job. And so I get offered a job, my first job, without an application, without a resume. I'm walking out the door. Mr. Morrison says, by the way, you do have references, don't you? And he said, we're going to need those for the file. So I sent him afterwards. And so I taught 5 classes of freshman English at Center Grove Junior High and never had more fun in my life. Ever. I thought I was changing the world. Felt like I was. I was sure going to try. Mm-hmm. And while I'm doing this, rather than go to IU to get my master's, I started going to Butler, driving back and forth from Franklin to Butler. Started taking a class. I ended up getting out of it in 3 years. And right place, right time. The summer I get my master's degree, Coach Thompson takes the basketball job at Austin Peay University. And he told me I didn't have much of a chance. And so I talked to Red Fought, the athletic director, and I said, I'm 26 years old. Do I have a chance for the job? He goes, yeah, absolutely. So I applied for the job. I didn't actually apply. I said, I want you to consider me. And they called me in for an interview. And to make a long story short, I'm offered the job as the head coach, head basketball and baseball coach at my alma mater when I was 26. And that's a surprise, which starts a life, a professional life of never applying for a job in my life. I've never applied for one. All the jobs I've had, I've never filled. I've never had an application.
We'll start all over and try that again.
Well, right. Yeah. When I told you that luck and fate are some of the biggest factors in my life, I wasn't making it up. They really are. And so I stayed at Franklin for 4 years. My first year, we broke a record for wins. Went to the NAI national tournament, lost on a half-court shot at the buzzer in the first round.
Not that you remember it.
Yeah, have nightmares about it all the time. And then we went back that was in 1978. We went back in 1980. We were ranked 15th in the nation, and had a Final Four team. We lost in the second round by 1 to a team that ended up third, but we were that good. And after my fourth year, I was informed by the president and dean that I was not going to be. I was on a tenured track position. They weren't going to give me tenure for whatever reason. That was the most devastating thing in my life, excluding deaths of family members. I mean, I was crushed. Yeah, my alma mater basically sits there and looks me in the eye and goes, we don't want to be associated with you anymore.
After winning 75%.
After having the highest winning percentage in the history of basketball at that school. And that's a tough deal.
Mm-hmm.
I thought my career was over, to be honest. And so, I spent a year working like everybody else. I think I was selling something. I was, when you're a former coach, I'll tell you who wants to offer you a job when you're a former coach. People in the insurance business.
Insurance, yeah.
Yeah, and so I was doing that.
Did you ever get a reasonable explanation?
No.
As to why they ended?
No.
You
know what? But look, they made the decision that they thought was best for them.
And as it turns out,
it did turn out to work out for both of us.
It worked out pretty good for you.
Yeah, and I look, my family my wife and daughter have been much more judgmental about it than I have. Mm-hmm. I've tried to move on and look at it realistically and think, looking at that 26 to 30-year-old Bob Lovell, I wouldn't have been a big fan like they were. And so literally phone rings again. 1992 phone rings. Nick Kellum, who's the dean of the School of Physical Education at IUPUI, calls me. Says, I had called him actually. Said I'd been applying for jobs and interviewing for, trying to get that Franklin type job. I interviewed at Adrian College in Michigan. I interviewed at Wayne State in Detroit.
So you were willing to relocate?
Yeah, absolutely. I was. I'm not sure my wife and daughter were, but I was. Mm-hmm. So, I'm trying to get back in it. And so Nick calls and goes, I know you're looking for a job. He goes, our coach, Mel Garland, has been diagnosed with leukemia. We're not sure what's going to happen. We need an interim coach. You're the guy that I've told people can do this. He said, I believe all the people I'm talking to or heard about, you're the one guy who might be able to pull this off. And I said, we're friends, longtime friends. He's one of those guys who used to play at the Rogers family's house there in Plainsfield. Okay. So we've known each other this long. He goes, come up and talk to me. And I go, so I go and interview and walk out and go, I'm not interested. Don't want to do it. I want to coach, but not under these circumstances. Get home that night, Mel Garland calls me. He says, I want you to do this as a favor to me. Okay, I'll reconsider. And so I went in and took over a group of guys whose coach was in bad shape and had one winning season in 12 years, starting to turn the corner, but not there by a long shot. And I agreed to do it for a year to see how it worked out. And in my first meeting, I had 18 players. And by Christmas time, I had 10. We had some academic issues. We had some issues in terms of following team guidelines, like showing up on time, going to class, those kinds of things. And when nowadays it's interesting, people talk about changing culture. I felt like more had to create a culture because there wasn't one. And I had a fantastic group of guys. So we go out there and somehow, some way, squeeze out a winning record. get into the NAI District 21 playoffs for the first time in the history of the program. And so I got all my guys coming to me. I got, administrators coming and say, we want you to stay. We want you to stay, but you need to apply. We have to open the job up.
Okay.
You're right?
Yeah.
And I said, not interested. I told you I'd do it for a year.
Uh-huh.
And so, I'm talked off the ledge by my wife. She goes, apply. Just go through the process and see what happens. And, they had told me that the process would be in my favor. But still, during the interview, the people in the selection committee, there were a bunch of people that didn't want me hired. Back then, I'm a hard guy to like. Might still be that way now, but as a coach, I was a combative, in your face kind of guy.
No kidding.
I'm willing to yell at anybody in the building.
No
right?
kidding.
Oh, no question. I was, and I am absolutely not proud of that behavior whatsoever.
But it was your program, and you were trying to do what you wanted to do.
Trying to win games.
And it was difficult for you to listen to people on the outside.
Yeah,
Does that sound
absolutely.
fair?
Yeah, that's fair. It's hard to listen. I learned this years ago. Everybody knows more than you do as a coach.
Mhm.
Everybody's smarter than you. Even your family, even your friends. They all are smarter than you are. They're not, but that's how it goes. Coaching's hard. And so, excuse me, I go through the interview process and I'm offered the job. And I accept it. And I'm excited. I'm literally back in the game. The question now is, I live in Franklin. I'm driving to downtown Indianapolis. And in my mind, I want to move closer. And in my wife and daughter's mind, you want to take her out of Franklin Community Schools where she's grown up her whole life. And my daughter, I remember vividly having a conversation with Steph saying, she goes, Dad, why? She was a 8th grader. She goes, Dad, why are you so intent on ruining my life? I said, I'm not ruining your life. You'll make other friends. Yeah. She goes, how do you, that whole scenario people have been through. And so we decided to stay in Franklin.
Spoiler alert, the ladies did win.
Yeah, but we stayed in Franklin. Our daughter Steph ended up going to IUPUI, loved it, had a great experience. I appreciate the fact that they helped us educate our daughter. And as the coach's child, she's had 15 brothers every year, and she had a great experience. Lifelong friends that she made up there that were on my team. Married one of my former players, and so yeah, I mean it was a great choice, and so I take the job, and a month into my actual full-time job, that second year, my second season, Nick Kellen walks in with 3 or 4 boxes of files, literally puts them on my desk and says, congratulations, we've just named you the athletic director. No, true story, man. You can't make this up.
Your
right?
reaction?
My reaction was, you're going to pay me more.
Yeah.
And he goes, no. And I said, so I'm not taking it. He goes, yeah, you are. He says, because if you don't, this is a position that is athletic director / men's basketball coach. So if you don't do one, you can't do the other. I said, I'm excited. Let's just go ahead and do this. And so I did that for 10 years. I coached for 12. I did the AD stuff for 10.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of the fact, Greg, when I went there, as I said, men's basketball had not had a winning season in 12 years.
They were the Metros, right?
Yeah, the Metros.
Back then.
I like that name. Still cherish my Metro gear.
Jaguars now?
Jags.
UPI,
yeah, absolutely.
Jags.
And then, on our athletic teams, softball had played in the NAI National Softball Tournament. And when I stepped down as AD, we'd had 24 teams playing NAI National Tournaments. And we had a great amount of success. And we transitioned into the NCAA.
Yeah.
And look, I get a lot of credit. I think it's misplaced. There were a whole lot of people who were very, very important in what we did. But it was a great time in my life. I look back on it fondly, that we did something people didn't think could be done. We won more games than they had ever thought they could possibly win. We did more things athletically than had ever been done in the history of the program. And I will forever cherish the opportunity, but I'll also cherish the relationships that I have with those former players, administrators, faculty members, and everything. That's why I told you before we got started. That's why I still have until December. I continued to teach. I love IUPUI, and I will always love IUPUI. It's an incredibly important part of the Lovell family, and it will always be that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, did your philosophy change along the way? You had talked about how difficult you might have been to get along with.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now you're in charge not only of your program, but the entire athletic program. Was there something that triggered saying, I've got to change? Or was it just?
I was still, no.
It didn't change.
I'll tell you what changed my life in terms of how I approach things was in 2005 when I almost died of a heart attack.
Okay.
Now, if that doesn't get your attention, there's no hope for it.
That should.
Right?
Right.
But, in my days as an athletic director, I had this simple philosophy. I wanted to hire good people I liked, and I wanted to get the hell out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I told them all. We didn't have very many meetings. I wasn't a big meeting guy, but we would meet, and I would tell people, I'm a basketball guy. I'm an expert on basketball. Okay. I'm not a volleyball coach. I'm not a softball coach. I'm your advocate. I'm your facilitator. That's my job as an athlete. I view my job as an athletic director as your advocate and as someone who's able to get things done that you can't get done. Okay. I know how to navigate the politics of campus. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand how to navigate the politics of campus at Franklin. That was the lesson I learned from leaving there. The lesson I learned quickly when I went to IUPUI. It's a massive place. It takes you a while to figure out politics on the campus, but you got to figure it out or else. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to get us positioned athletically in a good light with people on campus. And I softened a lot, quite frankly, my approach. I recognized very early on as an athletic director that I can't approach being in charge of the program the way I am in charge of my specific program. I have to look at the bigger picture. And to be honest, the guy that helped me negotiate that, if you think about IUPUI's campus, one of the focal points is Michael Carroll Stadium. And Mike was one of my closest friends. He was in charge of fundraising for our athletic program. That's how I met him. He was a vice president for community affairs of the Lilly Endowment. I hired his wife to be my assistant against his wishes. He said, I don't want you to hire my wife. I said, I don't report to you. I love you, but I don't report to you. Mm-hmm. She's working for me. Yeah. And so Mike was my advocate. Mike was my mentor. Mike was my best friend. And he was instrumental in me. He would literally call me every day and say, I just got a call from so-and-so and so-and-so. They're mad at you. He goes, you just can't, what you can't do, you have to kind of soften up. Here's a better approach. We would have these conversations all the time. And, I became a better human being because of Mike Carroll. The heart attack didn't hurt, though.
Yeah, well, it might have hurt. But
to be honest, I never had any chest pains. I had what they call silent angina.
Yeah.
2005, I almost died. Probably should have died, but I had a great cardiac interventionist who saved my life.
What's interesting, by the way, not to skip over his IUPUI coaching days from beginning to end, because he is in the IUPUI Hall of Fame, right? Athletic Hall of Fame.
Yeah, in fairness, I started it. Yeah, I'm not going to lie.
Is that a true story?
Absolutely.
Well, that's why you're in it.
Everything I've said has been true. I
might start one of those.
Well, but I'm blessed to be in 4 halls of fame.
Yeah. You are.
The one I understand, the one that made the most sense to me was IUPUI, because as an athletic director, one of the last things I did was create the Hall of Fame. We were coming up on our 25th anniversary as a campus. I thought that at that time, it was important for us to do that. I think that validated what we've been able to do. I thought it was a great way to reach out and touch our alums. I thought it was a great way in terms of moving the thing forward. It was important to do this and get some validity as a for real program. And so, as happens with IU and IUPUI, you had to navigate the administrative obstacles when you want to do something on the campus in Indianapolis, and you have to run all the interference with the people down in Bloomington. So it took a while to get it done, and once we got it done, I'm honored to say that I'm in the Athletic Hall of Fame. Jokingly, I actually did create it, to be honest.
Yeah. But you also, from my understanding, helped develop so much more of the athletic program than what it was when you stepped in. That's got to be fair to say.
I think we did. I think it's fair. And again, no one does anything by themselves.
Right.
Just remember, I was blessed. But I'd like to tell you I had this grand vision of how things would be. You know what? I just woke up every day, drove to Indy, worked as hard as I could work, drove home and kissed my wife and daughter, and did the best I could. I was blessed to be around great people. Blessed to be around people who weren't afraid of a fight, weren't afraid to roll up their sleeves and work. And my job was to give them direction. My job again was to be an advocate, and my job was to be in the trench and swinging with you. And we just all shared a vision that not a lot of people had. We shared a vision that this could be so much better than what it was. We had no idea what it would end up being, but we knew we could do better, and we all dedicated ourselves to do it.
It's funny, even people like me and people back in Lagodi, when we first started listening to your talk show, Indiana Sports Talk, people would call you Coach.
Yeah, they still do.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm honored to be called that.
Absolutely, and you deserve that, Coach.
Thank you.
But my point was, at the time, we're like, where did he coach? He's doing this. He's great at it.
Right.
But where did he coach? And you're finding that he was a very, very successful coach. But why did that end at IUPUI?
I was worn out, to be honest. It was. I'd given everything I had, to be honest. And we were transitioning from the NAI into the NCAA, and I just felt, number one, I didn't have any energy left. I'd given them everything I had to get to that point. I'd had some health issues. My last year as a coach, had a couple things. Had one when I was on the road. Had a TIA, or a transient ischemic attack. Had one of those at the end of a game. Scared me to death. My family, my wife and daughter, were pleading with me to stop.
Did you live and breathe? I know you were.
Yeah.
It sounded like you were obviously focused on family, but it had to be in your head all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's going to happen next?
They know I need to win games.
Yeah, maybe that's the way to put it.
The best way to put it is my daughter coming home from practice one day, walking in, and my wife and daughter talking, and they don't know I'm home yet. And my daughter says to my wife, "I sure hope Dad has a good practice today, because you know how he is if things don't go well at practice." And then those kinds of discussions make you begin to rethink what you're doing. But if it was more than anything, I think at the time I made the decision, my wife and daughter wanted me to stop. My mom and dad wanted me to stop. They were still living, and we were making the move to the NCAA. And in my mind, in my administrator and coach mind, I was certain that the institution would not commit the resources they needed to commit to be successful. And as the guy on the front line, I'm going to get the blame. I'm not going to win enough games, and they're going to fire me. And so I literally go into the chancellor's office, Chancellor Bepko, and say, "I do not know where my next check's coming from. I just know it's not going to come from you." And I said, "I'm going to leave. We can stay friends. I've done everything I can do. I can't give you any more. You need somebody else to take this a step further." And that's people, people on campus going, "It was a noble thing to do." Some were saying it's a dumb thing. I don't know. For me, it felt right. For me and my family, it felt right. I don't advise you, Larry, to stop a coaching career. Excuse me, Larry, Greg. I don't advise you to stop a coaching career, 21-year coaching career, without a job. It's not my advice. You ever thought about that?
No, but again,
here's the deal, Greg. There's a theme here, right? Are you noticing?
It must have worked out.
Phone rings. Scott Eaker from Network Indiana,
Yeah.
who had been my play-by-play guy. He'd been our radio play-by-play guy my last 2 years at IUPUI. Young guy, great guy, smart, bright, news and sports director of Network Indiana. And the announcement's made. He calls me and goes, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't have any idea. I don't have a job."
Any suggestions?
He says, basically, and these are the classic words, "I have an idea for a radio show."
You're getting ahead of me.
My hand to God. That's exactly what he said.
Yeah.
So I'll let you, Greg, go back to your notes.
Well,
But
I
that's
haven't
it.
even looked at my notes.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And you said in the beginning I won't need to.
Yeah, you don't need notes.
And I don't.
We don't work with notes in this.
No.
In this studio, this is a no-note studio.
Yeah. But somewhere along the way, the Horizon League comes calling.
Yeah,
So,
they did.
So was
Yeah.
that prior to?
Because
7
I'm doing the
years,
show.
You're doing the show.
I'm doing the show.
And the
And the Horizon League together, literally trying to kill myself.
okay.
So I start the show in August of 1994, right?
Yeah.
8 stations. Scotty Eaker has an idea to do a statewide post-game show. It's not my idea, it's Scott's.
Okay.
And so he said, "I've got this idea. I think you'd be great for it." He goes, he talks about Network Indiana. He says small radio stations around the state are dependent upon high school sports for a lot of their revenue, especially on the weekends during high school football and basketball. And he said they're all mostly playing music or doing something, and then they break that format and go to a football or a basketball game.
Right.
He said, "I have a theory that that audience that was listening to you during the football game isn't really going to go back to music. My theory is that if you provide them some sports programming until midnight, you'll be able to retain a lot of that audience." No data, no stats. It's just an idea, just a thought. And guess what? He was right.
Well, when we were in the single class system.
Yeah,
at
things
the
were
time,
different. Things were way different. And so
because the sport, I mean, after the games, you wanted to hear what other schools did.
well, but that was the question I had. I said, so we're talking. I said, so let me see if I got this right. I live in the region, right? Let's say, so I live in Hobart, Indiana, right? And I don't care what some team in Madison does. Why do I care what the Madison football team does? We're never going to play them. We're never going to see them. This will never work. And it was, well, we think that maybe people do care. They'll look around at maybe a sectional or regional, semi-state. That's a team they might have to play and all that. And so I was wrong. He was right. But it was one of the objections to begin. Secondly, you know how it is when you've never done something. There's always skepticism, something that's brand new. We had no idea. We were as stunned about the success as anybody else, probably more so, to be honest. We've been on 28 years, right? And in our business, 28 years is like 2 centuries.
Yeah, it is. It's like a dog's life, right? I mean, and to that point, when I talked about people in our area when they first started listening to you, didn't know your background as a coach. Well, when I told my daughter just 2 weeks ago, whenever it was that you graciously said, "Hey, anytime, anywhere," I told her I was going to interview. I didn't think she'd know Bob Lovell. I mean, she's mid-30s.
Well, I don't know your daughter, but I like her.
You love her. She's mid-30s, and you know what she said?
Right.
She said, "Oh man," she said, "that takes me back." She said that voice is just nostalgic from her high school days.
Right.
And it wasn't like she was a basketball fan.
Not at all.
Necessarily.
Not at all.
But think about teenagers
Yeah.
driving around on a Friday night listening to Indiana high school sports.
As I like to say, as cliched as it sounds, only in Indiana.
Only in Indiana?
Only in Indiana will you do it.
Yeah.
It won't happen in Illinois. Won't happen. Name the state. It isn't going to happen. It'll happen in Indiana.
So you're on for 4 years, 3 years, and the IHSAA says, you know what? We're going to change the format a little bit. We're going to go from one. So now you're thinking, now why in the world would somebody from Hobart, Indiana be interested in Madison?
Well, yeah.
And that's largely true these days. But there's still very much an interest of, hey, I'm going to find out that Jasper score. I'm going to find out that Bar Eve score tonight. And but even that, you can get those things instantly today.
Sure you can. But you don't need me.
So what's the secret? Why the success even today? You say the Scoreboard Show is the star of the show,
Well, it is.
and maybe at one time it was.
At one time it was.
Yeah.
Things.
But don't people also listen in? They like the coaches calling in.
Oh, they really do.
Yeah.
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 I tell you what, in my mind, I try so hard not to make it about me. If you'll notice, it's
Well, you
not the
did.
Bob, it's not the Bob
Absolutely.
Lovell show. I've never wanted it to be that way, and I hope to God it won't be.
Right.
It's the information is the star of the show, not me. This will be a show that can continue for 20, 30, 40 years. They don't need me. Honest to God, they don't need me. You know. But I think one thing is, you know exactly what you're getting every Friday and Saturday night. No surprises. We're like an old friend.
That's exactly right. You are.
Yeah.
Really? And that's basically what my daughter was telling me.
Yeah, we're like an old friend that you know what you're going to get, you know what you can expect. And I learned early on it was incumbent upon me. I was taught this lesson years ago by my mom and dad. You know, when I was getting ready to, I was a kid and starting my first job and stuff like this, and they would tell me, look, the key to all of this is show up on time and act like you care. My dad said, if you do that, things will work out for you. So, Greg, I show up on time, and I, honest to God, care. I really do. And you know, and I get emotional talking about some of this. But look, when you are in the position I'm in, when you sit in that chair, people have choices. They have plenty of choices to make on a Friday and Saturday night. If you choose to turn the dial and listen to me, it's a big deal. If you're a coach and you've just won a game, you got plenty of things to do. But if you take the time to pick up the phone and call me and talk about your team, that's a big deal.
That's a big deal.
And then there are other things like I had a coach call me from the northern part of the state. It's about a long time ago. Calls me and he sounds to me like he's outside. It sounds like he's walking. This is a football coach, right? And it sounds like he's walking. His team has just beaten a team in the sectional. This is a sectional game. And I said, Coach, where are you? He goes, I'm walking back to school from, and I forget who they played. He said, I promised my guys that if we won this game, I'd walk back to school. I said, okay, so how cold is it? Because it's snowing, right? I mean, it's snowing, and he's up in the northern part, like Goshen, someplace up in there. And he says, it's brutal. I said, how far is the caravan behind you? And he said, no. He said, you can see lights. As far as I can see, there are headlights behind me. How does that not inspire you?
No, and it's so enjoyable when, especially in the moment, when the coaches call and just so excited. And I know I had so many opportunities afterward as a radio play-by-play person to call you. I regret I didn't, but my thought was he doesn't want to hear from me.
Sure, I do.
You know, I would wait for the coach.
Sure, I do.
I'd wait for the coach to call in. Never did. You know.
Yeah.
But I
well, but then there are the
I will.
But then there are the interviews when football coach just outside of Indy calls me and says, he said, hey, look, I buried my father earlier in the week. He said, my dad called me before, it's like 2 days before the funeral, before he passed. He said, my dad calls me and says, don't forget to call Bob's show on Friday.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's why you still do it.
Yeah.
Why you still do it. Any idea how long you'll do it?
It's funny. You know what? As long as I can.
Yeah.
I have pretty well chronicled health issues with my heart. I have great doctors, take a lot of drugs, walk every day, take care of myself. I feel great. I don't have any plans. I'm not a milestone guy. I mean, milestones don't mean anything to me. I've done it for 28. We start season 29 at the beginning of August. We're back on August 5th, and so. Is it do I get to 30 and then no? I have, to me, what's the difference between 30 and 31? Come on. So how much longer? Sometimes these decisions aren't not something you make. Others make it. I don't think that's necessarily happening. But my wife and I have talked about it, and she has said, "You got to think about this. I got to get this plug in for my wife. My wife Penny. We've been married 53 years. Okay.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Be 53 in July, and haven't spent weekends with my wife in 53 years.
Why it's 53 years?
That's her explanation. I don't disagree. So, in college, I played two sports. I played basketball and baseball. So my weekends in college are occupied. When I graduated from college, I started coaching two sports. Right. My weekends are occupied. I coached for 21 years. I've done a radio show for 28. So we don't have the normal life that people have. Right. We've missed family parties, weddings. Everyone in our family knows if it's a weekend, better be early in the afternoon. By 7 o'clock, you got no chance of getting us. And so, and my wife has said, look, I don't want to be in a position that if you stop doing the show, it'll be because you wanted to spend more time with your wife. She goes, that's not happening. Do the show as long as you want to do the show. That's great. I do the show. Here's the thing, though. As long as I feel like I have a certain relevance to the discussion, as long as I feel like the show has a relevance, I will absolutely not do the show if I don't think I'm at the level that I need to be, or if I think the show has lost any of its effectiveness. I'll stop. I respect it too much to do it. I want this to. And whenever the show ends, I want it to be remembered as something that's unique and important in people's lives. And I'm not going to do anything to change all that.
So are you like me? And I don't mean to compare myself to you, but in the sense of
I'm not as handsome as you.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But when my season's over, my broadcast season,
right?
And keep in mind, it's just a hobby for me as well.
Sure.
But so I enjoy every single game. But I'm ready for the summer. I'm ready to take a little break. But by the time the season starts again, in your case, August 5th, I'm ready to go. Is that the way it is with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you enjoy that time away, but you're ready to get back when the time comes.
Well, at the end of my coaching career, my wife decided that we needed a pool. She said, I've given up vacations for all these years with you coaching. And now that you're not coaching, we're going to do something that I want to do. And that is I want a pool. And so 30 years ago, we built a pool at our house. And I don't do the show in June and July. I'm poolside most of the day. As a matter of fact, I'm giving up pool time for you.
He is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't do that there aren't a lot of people for whom I do this.
I believe there would be.
Greg, I would do that for you. But no, I mean it's I once I get into the mid-July and I start looking at the calendar and getting ready to go. And because Friday nights are just in my mind, something about Friday Night Lights, that whole concept. There's been a book, TV series, a movie for a reason about Friday Night Lights. And I'm a basketball guy, and I will always be a basketball guy. But you want to get energized, talk about Fridays during the fall. It's a big deal. And I want to continue to be a part of things that are important to people.
Well, important to our audience is the Lagodi area. And I want to make a couple of ties if I could.
Yeah.
I know you're very familiar with the area, but Carrie Prather.
Yeah.
Carrie Prather is the president of Franklin University and apparently followed you very closely.
He came in 2 years after I left.
Yeah. Won over 500 games in coaching, athletic director, president. But I'm sure you know Carrie fairly well. Is that
Ran into him at Meyer about a month ago.
Really? Health good?
And so, he's good. And then I saw him, sadly, I saw him at a funeral of a mutual friend. So, I run into him from time to time.
Well, when he was in high school, he was the student manager for Jack Butcher's 1970 team. And in fact, I'm going to be showing that on the screen right now. He's the fourth from the right with the coat and tie as the student manager. He was probably 4'10". I mean, that's a guess.
Right.
I don't know but he was always the smallest guy. But he was always the umpire. When I first started Little League, he was maybe 16 years old, looked like us, but he was the umpire behind the pitcher. He had all three bases, or four, I guess there are. And that was what he was very serious about.
Right.
and then he went into a student manager role. And as I think about that, those aren't coincidences
No, not at all.
that he's not necessarily focused on playing,
Right.
but he is learning the game,
Right.
right? Understanding the game,
Right.
and he turns out to be the winningest coach in Franklin College history.
Well, obviously, I'm an alum, and I think he's done a
Mhm.
fantastic job.
Mhm.
I mean, he really has. And to do it at that level for the length of time that he did is amazing. Coaching is a hard profession. The Division III level is a difficult level to coach because you're recruiting kids whose parents are going to spend thousands and thousands of dollars for their sons and daughters to continue their careers. And at some point, a lot of those people say, I'm not sure it's worth all the money and all that. And so to have the success at the level they've had at the length of time, and you mentioned he's the president, he's doing a tremendous job. Knew he would because he's a successful guy, thoughtful, deliberate, a really intelligent guy. And the thing I think he does better than anything else is builds consensus with people, involves everybody, engages everybody, gets everybody to share a vision, and that's difficult to do. And he's done it extremely well. It's one of the reasons why he won that many games.
Because I know his background, and he was learning the game as he went along.
Right.
But how rare is it for somebody who's never played a second of probably junior high basketball? He might have been on the team, but high school basketball, college basketball, to be a coach at that level.
It's not the normal path, but you know him. I know him. I'm not at all surprised. I think that he was destined to be successful, irrespective of what it was going to be. He was going to be a successful guy, and just happened to be that he chose a different path, or the path was chosen for him. But he's done it and done it well. There's nothing at which he would be in charge that he wouldn't do well. Absolutely nothing. He's that kind of guy.
So the other tie, if you would, you obviously are very, very familiar with our brand of basketball down in southwestern Indiana, the rivalries, Jack Butcher. I guess I'd like to hear your perspective on the passion that we would have down there. What's it like from the outside? You're up here in Franklin, Indianapolis area, but you have to know everything that's going on around the state. You're very familiar with our rivalries and our passion.
Well, I think, quite frankly, it's nostalgic in a sense that if you didn't know much about the history of Indiana basketball, spend the night down in Daviess County, DuBois County, wherever down in that part of the state, go to a high school game. You want to know what it was like back in the 50s, the 60s, and still moving forward. Basketball is incredibly important. It's a part of the fabric of life in your communities. And it has been, and I hope to God it will be for a long, long time. But it's, again, I go back to this. It's important. It matters. These things matter more than we probably even understand. It matters. It's the kind of thing where you're growing up in Lagodi and you want to be a Lion. You're growing up to be a Lion. Growing up in Plainfield, I couldn't wait to play for the Quakers. Are you kidding me?
Relate, right?
I could relate because my heroes growing up were the Pope brothers and John and Don Harlan, guys who were playing, and that's who I wanted to be. And fortunately, that still happens a lot in communities down in your part of the state, and I hope it lasts forever. And basketball is the great vehicle for it. It's the great equalizer, and it brings so many people together, and it's so important in their lives.
And finally, Jack Butcher. Obviously, you've run across his path a time or two. What is your familiarity, maybe personally, with Coach Butcher?
Well, I just know, I had a chance to come down and speak to their banquet a few years back. Most of my recollections are from a distance, but again, I go back to this. When I was growing up, I wanted to be a coach. I wanted to be that guy, right? He's that guy. He is the epitome of what that guy is in your community. And I think when you think of a guy of the stature of Coach Butcher and the impact he's had on his community is immeasurable, quite frankly.
It is.
And the impact he's had on people, specific members, team, part of the team, managers, statisticians, fans. It's rare in communities maybe not so rare in Indiana, but it's rare that one individual can have the impact that a guy like Jack Butcher has. Yeah, I know that, streets are named after him, gyms named after him. I got all that. We're talking about honest to God life lessons and help prepare them to be adults and be, living in Lagodi, being in that part of the state. Everyone benefits from the influence, whether you played for him or didn't play for him. You benefit from his influence on his community, and there are not very many people who have that opportunity. And when we get the opportunity to honor them, we ought to. And he's one of those rare kinds of guys. And he could coach basketball now.
Pretty good.
My God, could he
Pretty good.
coach?
Pretty good.
And the thing I appreciate from a coaching standpoint is had a philosophy, stayed true to his philosophy, recognized what he had to do with his particular players and talents, his particular area and the people on his schedule, recognized what he needed to do and was true to the game, respected the game more than anything. And I think those are the lessons that he taught people. But, I could only dream of having that kind of impact on my community like the way Coach Butcher has.
It's interesting when you were talking earlier about the grind that it was on you.
Oh, yeah.
And that was your focus, and you'd go home and they would have to wonder what type of mood you were in.
Right.
As you were saying that, my mind went to the Butcher family because we had, kids that played with him.
Right.
And I want to ask you this because she's going to have to commit after I tell people this, but Coach Butcher, not necessarily in the health to do a show like this these days.
Right.
So I asked his wife, Rita, what do you think? And of course, she's like, whoa, wait a minute. I don't want to be on, think about it. She told me she's going to do it.
Good.
And it will be her story.
Good.
But the story about her time at that time. So make sure you guys listen to that or watch that. But I'm thinking, how would your wife do if you talked to her, especially shortly after your coaching career, and said, hey, tell me about your life during this time frame? What would you talk about?
My wife is very shy. My wife doesn't. No, seriously. My
sounds
wife,
like Coach Butcher.
My wife, she would probably not agree to the interview.
No, okay.
Knowing my wife, she's never been about publicity. She feels uncomfortable.
But they have a story
about it. She has a story. I think. I think the biggest story is that meeting each other in the 8th grade at Plainfield Junior High, and seeing where we are today.
Yeah.
I think part of her story would be that it's been fun, that it's been unexpected, and through it all, I like to say it this way: we're still two kids from Plainfield.
So I'd like to give anything that we didn't talk about, that I didn't bring up, that you didn't talk about, that you'd like to.
My grandson.
An open forum. Let's do it. He's pretty proud of his grandson, aren't we all?
Absolutely.
But he's got really good reason. So
my grandson,
talk about
Jackson Lovell Wheeler.
Jackson Lovell Wheeler.
I like the name. It's a strong name. He is 23, graduated from Hanover back in December. And his first job, he is working at the NCAA, just a few blocks from where we are. He's in their compliance department. He works on the initial eligibility. He's having a great time. The irony here is his best friend, he went to Brebeuf Jesuit. His best friend at Brebeuf Jesuit, and now his roommate in Indianapolis, is a young man named Jack Johnson. And Jack Johnson's grandfather is Jim Morris, the former basketball coach at IU Southeast, a team we competed against for years and years. And the irony is that both of us, our grandsons, are best friends.
Wow.
And Jack Johnson's a Notre Dame grad, works at Rolls-Royce. He's an engineer there. And those two are living the best lives they have. I'm enormously proud of my grandson. He had a great career as a lacrosse player. Can you imagine the phone call he has to make to call his grandfather to say, I'm not ever going to play basketball again? He made that call. It's a tough call. And he said, I said, so what are you going to do? He goes, I'm going to play lacrosse. And, I was excited for him because he made a great choice. His father played for me at IUPUI. Both of us are basketball guys. So Jack takes a different path.
Right.
And people think I'm joking, but he's my hero. He took his own path. He's done it. He's taken his own path, not just on sports, but on how he lives his life. And I respect how he does it. Some things he's done, some of the decisions he made haven't been good, but he's manned up, owned up. He's done things, and I have no doubt things will go well for him because he's that kind of guy.
Fantastic. That's a good
way to
subject.
end.
Yeah, it
Good
really
way
is.
to end.
Well, I'll let you get back to the pool because we do have some daylight. Not a lot of daylight.
Yeah,
left,
but that's all right. We have lights.
Coach, I can't tell you
Oh, thank you.
how much I
Greg,
appreciate
I
it.
appreciate
I
it.
mean,
You
bringing
know,
me up here to this beautiful
again,
building.
I go back. Look, you got plenty of decisions on people you can talk to, and to decide to ask me to do this is an honor, and I consider it a privilege, and I hope everybody enjoys it.
I hope so, and I think they will. Thanks again.
Thank you.
That's Coach Bob Lovell. Now you know a little bit more about this Indiana neighbor, a lot more than what you did before we started. We'll get back to our local heroes in a little while, but we've got a couple of more of these to go. So if you want to watch, watch. If you don't. This one's for me, remember? But I appreciate it so much, you guys watching. Getting to know your Indiana neighbor with another Indiana legend, Bob Lovell.